did this random order instead of doing it alphabetically. And we have everybody having just 2 minutes. B. Roberson will be standing up with 1 minute to left and also with 30 seconds left. And when the clock goes off, you're to done. Okay? So the first question. I guess I should turn this. So yes. Yes, I will do that. So the first question is, what are your plans to retain and grow current business and attract new business? And what types of businesses would you focus on? So we're going to start with Renee and then move on.
I think what we need to do is we need to identify different parcels of land that are available, figure out what type of sector would most benefit from them, and try and aggressively recruit the industries from that sector to come here. And this will be different for different parcels of land. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. I want all types of industries to come here. Some people I know want more white collar, and I would love to provide jobs to people from Berkeley and San Rafael, but I think we need jobs for our people too. And so I will welcome all kinds, and I will try to recruit all types of businesses. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. So I think in order for us to start retaining and growing those businesses and bringing in new folks, I want to encourage us to do some more mixed types of development near our transit corridors as well as downtown on 23rd Street and right here near Hilltop. I think that one of the great advantages of doing so is that we will provide clientele for those who would like to bring their businesses to Richmond. I also think that we need to have a deep investment in our small entrepreneurs so that they can grow their businesses to scale. Additionally, I think that we have an opportunity to utilize our industrial areas to also bring research and development. I think there's an opportunity to thank you. Industries that will be very different to what we have right now, so that they're complementary and they offer different opportunities for employers and employment.
Yeah, they do. But they're being succinct and to the point.
Well, I think, businesses in the city of Richmond is extremely important. Our business tax revenue is one of the primary ways that we can fund some of the services all of the services that we look to provide here in the city of Richmond. So one of the first things that I would like to do is take a look at some of the ordinances that some of the business owners and potential business owners are saying are antiquated and kind of get in the way of them starting and expanding. Also, I'd like to revisit some of our loans that we have for startups in the city of Richmond. So that way, Richmond residents have the opportunity to take advantage of what's to come. And then also, I think that there's an opportunity in Richmond's port. I talked with the port director, and he said if he can have 50 to 100 more acres, he can easily fill it up within a year. And car companies know Richmond as the port to import cars in, and so there's an opportunity to double that $10 million that we annually get from the port into $15 or $20 million, which will most definitely help to fund some more services here in the city of Richmond and grow some of the resources that we provide for startup companies. Thank you.
A lot of what I do as mayor is actually recruit businesses. Hardly a day goes by that I don't have a phone call or a meeting in person with a prospective business for Richmond. The business roundtables I've been putting on since I was elected, and the marketing and branding study were all intended to help us recruit businesses to Richmond. And I work with city staff, people like Janet Johnson. I work with the Chamber of Commerce, real estate brokers, all the time to do this. As far as what kind of businesses we want to bring to Richmond, there are several things I look for. I look for businesses that will diversify our economy. I look for businesses that have a high job density. I look for businesses that have a range of skill levels and compensation levels. And probably something that's really important is I look for businesses that bring services and amenities to the city of Richmond.
You got 1 minute? Okay, sorry, but tell me to stop. I have on 2 minutes. Okay.
You got 1 minute? Okay, so I want to elaborate on this idea about services and amenities. One thing that businesses look for when they come to Richmond is they look for services and amenities. They look for things that will be attractive to their employees. And so when we do something, when we bring a business that not only provides jobs and employment and taxes and all the other things we look for, but a business that actually improves the quality of life in Richmond, then we're getting two for the price of one. You know, there's been a lot of articles lately about how you define a successful city. And one of them is how many brew pubs does it have. So this is an example of the kind of amenities we bring to the city. We have 3 brew pubs in Richmond now. They employ people, they provide jobs, they pay taxes. They also attract other businesses. They attract residents and other people in Richmond. So we get 2 for the price of one.
Yeah, what I would want to do is actually work with our planning department to see what some of the issues are in terms of getting permits approved and what are some of the fees that we're charging, because it's not a lot of folks actually approach me saying that they did want to do business in Richmond, but they preferred to go to another city because the fees were cheaper over there and they didn't have to worry about as much. So I really want to work with the planning department to see, like, what is this barrier, what are the fees, and what are some creative ways that we can attract and retain businesses and also offer incentives that can help bring businesses in. And there's also already stakeholders within our community that work with the small business community and have a relationship with them. So making sure that I'm getting a relationship with them to understand, like, what are some of the challenges of the business community in the city of Richmond, and what are some of the ways that we can support the business community to make it a bit easier. And in terms of the types of businesses that I'm interested in, just comes from feedback that I've heard talking to folks in the community. One is folks want to see another grocery store in the city of Richmond, so making a plan on how we can go about that. 2, any type of social gathering place, because one of the main complaints that I hear is that there's not really anything to do in Richmond, so people go other places, and we can figure out how to do that in downtown Richmond. And any other amenities that I feel like we need to talk to the community about to see what's missing in Richmond and where we can place it as we're trying to figure out the type of businesses we want to attract to the city.
So my name is Dave Schoenthal, and I'm asking for your vote. Largely because I've spent the last 18 years in Richmond and 9 years in Richmond, in particular working in the community and working with small businesses. On the Point Richmond Business Association as the president and also as the Chamber of Commerce board member, I've worked directly with businesses who say the following: we want to know that our fees are stable, that it doesn't cost us an arm and a leg to start our business there. Long-term stability too as well, so that there's not going to be random things that can be placed upon them, fees can be placed upon them at any given moment. So a thing like doing something like a business improvement district, such as the one that's on McDonald Avenue, doing it in Point Richmond, doing it here at the shops of Hilltop. Also doing a tax holiday. What I constantly hear is that people don't want to come to Richmond because they're afraid that for their safety. And when they get here, they say, this is one of the greatest places I've ever been. So what we need to do is attract them here. So a one-day tax holiday in each of those locations so that people can discover Richmond and uncover Richmond so they'll come back again and again. On the subject of a new business, what about the idea of putting a prefabricated home facility staffed by a labor union, so high quality, high skill level here in Richmond, because we need housing. We fundamentally need housing and we need good jobs. So if we put that kind of industry here in Richmond, back to if we built ships in 4 days, we can build housing for the now. This is the shot to the moon that Richmond could take. Right here, right now, I believe in it. I think that we have the goods to go forward. So with that, thank you very much. Catch you away with Dave.
My name is Eduardo Martinez. I've been on city council as a city council member. I've reached out to businesses. I've tried to listen to everyone and meet the needs of everyone, not only the citizens, the residents of Richmond, but also the businesses. I really believe that we need a here. And when I say that, I mean a place for people to gather, to enjoy themselves. And I see that place being McDonald Avenue and 23rd Street. There's a lot of empty spaces that need to be filled and filled with businesses. I also see a hotel on the Pro property. So if we can somehow make that happen, we can attract the business from San Francisco via the ferry to Richmond. And then we could have a shuttle that would come up to the Marriott so that they not only see the Craneway and see the Red Oak Victory ship with the water taxi, they also see the mall and the businesses here. So we need to integrate all of Richmond with transportation, and we need to make sure that Richmond is a place that attracts people, and by attracting people, attracts businesses.
Thank you. Alan Johnson. What I would like to see is to encourage the businesses that we already have in the city of Richmond, to work with them, to help promote their businesses so that they can grow. And also, I like what Main Street is doing. They go out maybe a quarter or so and bring the program out to the streets. And also, they're opening a restaurant. So we'd like to see more businesses come in like that by promoting the businesses that are already in existence. And I would also like to work with the entrepreneurs of Richmond who wants to start businesses but have had a hard time receiving that small business loan, so that they'll be able to start their business and bring it to Richmond. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I would ask the community input what kind of businesses they would want to see, and I would try to make it easier for businesses to come in. For example, a close friend of mine has a business, and she mentioned that the fees have gone up. So maybe I would encourage to reduce the fees, at least to compare it to the neighboring cities. And we have 2 minutes, huh? Oh, and also connect those people who want to open businesses to the services out there that educates them on how to do that. And if there's not a program that is specific to the majority of the needs, maybe create one. I know we have like the Renaissance Center, but I'm sure that they focus on small businesses for women. I'm not sure if they have it available for everyone. So just create another one or ask them to include everyone. Not sure.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Diego Garcia. First of all, I'd like to excuse myself and also to let you guys know that I had a personal emergency right now. That's why I came late, so I apologize for that. First, what I would do to retain the businesses here. One of the biggest things that I'm a business owner myself. One of the biggest things that we need is safety. That's one of the main concerns that we have. I remember Hilltop back in the late 80s and early 90s. It was really packed in here. I remember wanting to come and purchase things to go back to school, and it was really packed. Everybody wanted to come to Hilltop. But one of the biggest things that led a lot of people not come here is the safety reasons. You know, most people want to go to Concord now. And how do we retain people to come do business in Richmond? Is make sure that we can provide them that safety net. Get the people from our community to start going out and to do business in Richmond. One of the biggest things that a lot of people do, especially business owners in our corridors on 23rd Street, McDonald, 3rd Street, and even here, is they closing their business early. How do we get them to continue to open their business to later hours? You know, use some use of our buildings, not just the business aspect, but after the business, have them get there to be a resource center. And if we can even use some of these buildings to actually become a living space upstairs, and then even downstairs to be the business, that brings the economy up. How do we get the safety aspect on it? Is to be able to get some more funds to be able to reshape the facade of the businesses. When they live deteriorated, you don't have the lighting, people don't feel safe, and people don't go out there and shop. And then, of course, how do we get the people to expedite the permits and the fees?
Second question.
Oh, that was the second question, sorry. So that's what I would do as far as the, thank you. That's what I would do for business. Thank you.
I'm going to take this around, let Jim have his, Mr. Rogers have his 2 minutes.
Thanks, Don. Thank you all for coming. I want to say I endorse Tom Buck's call for 2-to-1 beers to blue pubs. I'm all in favor. I have a unique perspective, both in terms of the people running for city council and the incumbent council members. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody, I believe I'm the only person who's actually started a successful business from scratch, grew it to where it's grossing over $1 million, had about 20, 25 employees, depending on when it is. So that gives me a perspective both as a public official and as a private sector businessman being regulated by government. And I think that perspective is valuable. When we had the minimum wage debate, there are certain businesses that may have canceled expansions. Galaxy Dessert comes to mind. If the regular minimum wage that we did was applied to it, they came to me, they talked to me, I understood it, and I got an amendment put into it that still had a minimum wage increase for those businesses, manufacturing businesses, but it wasn't as large. So we avoided the possibility of losing either existing businesses or other ones. When Mayor Butt, Councilmember Meyer, and myself negotiated the Chevron modernization project, drawing on my business experience, I was able to look at the things that were deal breakers for Chevron and look at the things that were annoyances to them. So we pushed very hard. We got a great package. We got the best environmental protections. That's the U.S. We got $100 million, et cetera, et cetera. But we stayed away. We stayed away from putting in provisions which would actually cause it to be a deal breaker. And when we talk about moving forward, businesses want to know that there's people who are in business, who understand business, will not go up into crazy stuff like eminent domain and space-based mind control. I'm one of those people that have a record working for businesses and hope to be able to do it.
So we're going to take a break right now for lunch. And what I'm going to do is ask the candidates if you'd be the first ones through the line, get your food, go back to your seats, and then we'll have the rest of the folks go, so that when you're all done, we can maybe start with the second set of questions. Second round of questions, and we're going to start on the other side with Mr. Garcia. So the second question is, how would you expedite the permitting process? And we'll go back this way. Here you go.
Thank you. First of all, just take this small opportunity to let you guys know my name is Diego Garcia, and I'm a youth counselor. I know that I missed that part there. But regarding the question is, make it user-friendly. When I first opened two of my businesses, it was really hard and complicated for the permitting process. I filled in the application, turned in, paid my fees, and came back knowing that I was missing a lot of paperwork. So I would say make it user-friendly, make sure that businesses, owners, especially the new businesses, understand the process, know exactly what type of forms, applications to turn in, and really give the staff the training necessary to be able to let people know exactly what is it that you need to turn in. Because this going back and forth and the fees and all that stuff, no one's an expert in this, and we definitely need to make sure that we can get everyone to be able to understand that making it as smooth as possible with all the information that is needed will be the best way that people will get the process speeded up. So that's one of my biggest information and concerns that I have. Most of the staff are not well trained, they're not well informed, and then that gives the business owners more time to, or concerns, I would say, to be able to get all the paperwork necessary to turn in on time, and that will speed up the process. Thank you.
Hi. I would lower the fees, but also ask for your input since businesses is not my strongest suit here. I want to learn more, but I wanted to do the research, but I prefer to learn from you guys specifically, then do the research. So I have left my card on there with my email. If you guys have any ideas, let me know. I would like to be your voice. Thank you.
I think a lot of time on expediting paperwork has to do with the staff or who's handling your paperwork. So I would think that you should have a staff that is, have some expertise in what they're doing to expedite it more faster, so that you don't have to wait a long time. Thank you.
I would like to have an ombudsman or a liaison, someone who specifically takes someone who is going for their permits and leads them step by step so that they don't have to go around asking. We need to make the process a lot smoother, a lot easier to understand. And that's basically, the first step to making businesses want to come to Richmond. I've heard many people say that it's a lot easier to do business with cities and other cities. So I'd like Richmond to become one of those cities that people rave about in terms of doing business.
Someone's going to sit. So this is a key thing. So when one starts a business, you write a business plan. And in that business plan, you try to figure out all of the costs that you're going to incur to start up the business. So if you do not know what your permitting costs are, which sometimes people have been referred to our permitting fees, our structures as the Wild West, as they get hit with fees as they go through the project. So they need to have a coherent and cogent fee structure. And also, when we were building out Kaleidoscope, it took Kaleidoscope Coffee Point Richmond, it took nearly 17 months. And there were times when they said to Cassie, the owner, hey, you have to do this. And she wasn't even aware of it. That was in cycle of the project. So really understanding how much it's going to cost as you build out a project. Also, not adding additional permitting fees through the project, right? So we need to give people, businesses, both here and coming in, a really clear message that we're open for business. It's great that we would love to add some staff members, but we have to add revenue around that. So instead of charging in fees up front, why not say, hey, start the business up, and in a year in, maybe 2 years in, start collecting those permitting fees that were at the front. So instead of charging them right up the front, charge them so that they're coming in with their business. So what we're saying is we're making a long-term investment in the business, and so too are they, by agreeing to doing that structure. So time 30 seconds. So look, businesses need to understand straight up what the costs are going forward, because if they have any hidden costs, if it's workers' comp, if it's taxes, if it's permitting fees, any of these things, you will literally put businesses out of business. And they're the economic driver for our city. We cannot make them pariahs. They're the things that help us put parks and roads and buildings, businesses do that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think this goes back into how I answered my first question. It's going to take working with planning and building and also talking to businesses to see what some of the barriers are, because it's not the first time that I myself have also heard people try to work with our planning department and they feel like, okay, great, yeah, we're moving forward, and then there's another brick wall in front of them that says, no, here's another obstacle course that you need to go through before you can get to the goal that you're trying to reach in terms of obtaining your permits. So I think it's going to take stakeholder meetings between business owners and also the planning department to really nail down on what the issues are, and here's the solution, and also get council approval if it takes a policy to move that forward to make sure that this is going to be the next smooth process. But also at the same time, we either need to A, hire staff, or B, at least look into interns that are willing to sit down with new potential business folks, business owners that want to come into the city to help walk them through the process, all the fees, all the paperwork that needs to get done, as opposed to just giving them a packet, say, here, fill this out, here's this fee, oh, and in addition to that, here's another packet, here's your fee. I think that we need to have somebody dedicated to work with people to actually walk through the paperwork and get all that stuff laid out so there isn't any hidden surprises. So whether it's staffing or interns and just changing the process on how we go about distributing out permits to new potential business owners in the city of Richmond.
You know, people who believe that that the permitting process in Richmond is a huge obstacle, it's largely an urban myth. You know, we've done dozens of these business roundtables over the last 3.5 years. How many of you have been to at least one? I know a lot of you have. Okay, one of the questions we ask everybody, and these are startups or businesses that move to Richmond. One of the things we ask them all is, you know, how did the city of Richmond treat you? Permits, things like that. And I think with one exception, they all said that it worked really well. I didn't expect that because, again, it's an urban myth that somehow in Richmond we don't have our act together. But if you actually ask the people who've gone through the process, you'll find out that, in fact, we do. You know, our fees are no higher than anybody else's. They're lower in a lot of cases. You can't lower fees and make it work because you got to take the money from somewhere else. You know, you lower this business's fees, it means you're gonna have one less cop on the street over here. But at the end of the day, you know, there is room for some improvement, and it's at the building permit end of it. We don't have enough plan checkers. The one plan checker we have moonlights, and he doesn't really even work full time. And the other thing is that people looking for permits, time is money. They're not so much interested in how can I get my fees down to the cheapest dollar. What they're interested in is how fast can I get this process. And so that's really what we need to do is concentrate on expediting the processing time. I just don't know of any situation where people would trade time, you know, for money. They want time is what's valuable to them.
Well, as the chair of the EDC, we did explore this problem as we were trying to help the revitalization of the shops at Hilltop. And one of the issues that we did run into with smaller businesses was some of the way that our permits and fee structures were set up. So what we did on the EDC was we invited the planning director, Richard Mitchell, to come give a presentation and, you know, kind of put him through the ringer. And what we discovered is actually Belinda's office that is in charge of said fees and permits, said fees. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of antiquated permits and things that we do have to revisit, so that way we're not putting businesses through some 1980 or 1970s version of, you know, what it means to start up a business. And so that's why I'm all for revisiting some of the ordinances as well as some of the permits that we have in the city of Richmond. So that way we can make sure that we're not having people go through unnecessary paperwork. I also think that if we improve the electronic version of our permit process, I think that would really add to the amount of time, reduce the amount of time that individuals spend in City Hall on the second floor trying to get permits and fees done. You know, when you can pay fees or get permits done online, or even adding the feature to the Richmond app, you know, for individuals who are already on that, we could also help speed up the process by making it electronic, cutting down on paper.
Some of the efforts that we can make for our small business owners is to increase language and cultural capacity in our economic development department. I think that there's an opportunity to provide and kind of lean into this opportunity that a lot of immigrants start businesses at a higher rate than most other folks. And so I think that we need to support them in order to be able to get through the permitting process so that they can bring their business here. I think there's an opportunity to also do starter fees. We do starter fees for those who are just beginning their business, and then we move them towards scalable fees so that it's easy for them to go on a chart and say, my revenue is this much, these are going to be my projected fees for the year. I also believe that we have an opportunity to deepen our partnerships with local universities as well as local service providers that already provide technical assistance to small businesses and larger businesses to scale. If we are able to provide those partnerships when a customer or a potential business owner comes in, we would be able to refer them out. And that would be an advantage not only for us, but for the service provider to be able to increase the numbers of the support that they are providing. We have a great example of that on Main Street. Amanda has been able to put on so many of those events to not only drive community members to show up, but that also then increases the intrigue or the opportunity for her to recruit more businesses to come to the area. And so as far as the universities, they can provide us with some of the analysis around sales tax revenue to have that information so that we can tell business owners, this is a great place for you to locate. There's walkability. There's people who are already shopping in this corridor. Or, alternatively, for those in the industrial areas who are doing research and development, we can provide them with cost comparison for how much it's going to cost for them to be there versus in another area, so that we can make ourselves more competitive. Thank you.
I agree with Mayor Butt that I don't believe that this is a huge problem and impediment to businesses coming to Richmond. Having said that, there is room for improvement, and a few years ago we did sit down with the city manager, the planning director, and we did make some changes to get rid of some of the needless bureaucracy in the planning department regulations. I think beyond trying to make those changes, there's also the personal effort of elected officials. The fact of the matter is that when people doing new projects have problems, if they're calling and talking to a city council member who understands business like I do, who cares about it like I do, if I make a call into the city bureaucracy, it's more likely to get returned. In fact, it's pretty close to 100%. I had a very hands-on approach. I want to give you an example. We had the first attempt to develop Terminal 1, toll roads. The neighbors were having problems with it. The city staff felt they're just being NIMBYs, they never come around, waste of time, they just hated it and they would fight it to the death. I've been out meeting with the neighbors. I knew that wasn't true. In fact, an awful lot of neighbors were actually in the development industry, builders, whatever, architects. So I brought that back to the staff and said, no, these people are not just out to kill the project, they really have honest, legitimate concerns. We held charrettes, they put those concerns on the table, and they were not deal breakers. The project was agreed on by the developer, by the city, and by the neighbors. As it turns out, it died because there was a swing in the market and it wasn't sustainable for toll on a financial level. But in terms of the politics, we got it done. We heard from people, we came up with a good way. So that's the kind of hands-on, day-to-day approach that I think council members need to take.
Thank you. So, we had our house, we had an energy upgrade done to our house. And our contractor, who's been in the business for decades, told us, this city, the process was way smoother than any other city we've worked in. And they had worked in about 40 cities. So, again, I do think it's a bit of an urban myth. Now, that doesn't mean we can't improve. There are some things that could be made a one-stop shop instead of filling out your paperwork and then finding out, oh, I didn't collect the paperwork from this other desk, and then having to go there and make those extra trips. But, for most projects that are larger projects. Let's face it, the issue is not so much the city permits. The issue really is if you're a housing development, getting by the design review board, getting through the planning commission. And these are largely political things. And so you do need politicians who are prepared to meet with the business folks. And I have done this on several occasions, and I've explained the process to them. I even told them what are the best ways to deal with it. And I'll give you a simple example. There was a Terminal 1 development. They were getting stuck with the design review board. And some of you might think, whoa, how can a blind guy advise you about how to get past the design review board? And I told them, I said, look, you want a modern design. Most of your customers are going to be just like the people who are opposing you right now. So go with some of the design suggestions they are suggesting. Will get your project through, and it will be better business for you. So you need folks who are interested in business and who understand it on council. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go back now in reverse order. We're going to start with Mr. Bouple. How would you recommend managing the compatibility of residential development near historically commercial and industrial zoned areas?
Yes, sorry. So this is in terms of housing. One of the ways I see this, particularly when we are trying to attract businesses to our city, some of the best businesses from the city's point of view are, of course, retail businesses, because not just do you get property tax, you also get sales tax. Now, the deal when you ask a retail business to come here is pretty clear. You bring the business with the amenities, the sales tax, we will provide you with the customers. And the customers, we do that through housing. So getting housing in those kind of commercial areas is pretty important. The kind of housing that would help the most would be high density housing, so that we give a lot of customers a judicious mix of market rate and affordable housing, because let's face it, most businesses want more market rate housing with more disposable incomes for their customers. In terms of industrial areas, we've talked about this. There needs to be, there are buffers. There are also things where we talk about, where we had this when I was on council, where you give the industries an assurance that this will not change for the next 5 years or the 10 years, so that industries can plan. They are not just facing some sudden bad surprise. So those are my approaches. Thank you.
I think that certainly having the buffer zones is important, and I support that. We have done some of that. Having said that, there's a lot of issues where you're not going to make everybody happy. There's no magic solution. I come from a family where I was taught to see a lot of shades of gray. Not blacks, not whites, not slogans, not sound bites, but shades of gray, and to look at people's interests. My parents were both Ivy League educated scientists, so that's the kind of household I grew up in. And I think that what I bring to the table when we do have these conflicts is being an honest broker, and I'll put on the table, do I want our industry to be successful? Yes, I do. Do I want to have the housing, whether affordable housing, middle income, high income? Do we need that? Yes, we do. Both of those values tug at my heartstrings. They're both really important. So when we've had these kinds of issues in the past, I've been somebody that both sides can talk to. I can use my experience as a business person, having done that, having been an elected official for a number of years, and come up with solutions that are win-win creative solutions. Not necessarily at the end of the day ones that everybody, that one side or the other is totally happy about, but things that they can live with. That takes time. It takes having relationships with people, and it takes building trust over a number of years. And I've taken that time, I've built that trust, and I think I've been a productive force in some of these disputes. These disputes will continue, make no mistake about it. But I would like to be on the council so I can continue to be an honest broker and come up with win-win solutions.
So in historically industrial areas to bring residential, I think that folks have to be fully aware of what that means. So potential residents that are looking to move into the area, as well as the surrounding businesses, depending on the industries that they are. If they are, producers of pollution, if they have specific chemicals that they have going on in the air, if they have intense lighting, those are all circumstances that need to be taken into account that will affect not only the design, but what's possible there. In spaces where there is an appropriate buffer, mixed development, live, work can be possible. We can also create artisan villages, but again, it also depends on what industries are around there. I also think for myself it's very important that we're thinking about transit connections as we're trying to move folks away from being alone in their car for their commute, that we're thinking about how we can get them on a bus, on a shuttle, in a carpool situation. And so for residents to feel the full buy-in, even if they're not moving in, they have to feel like this is a great investment, not only for them as residents, that there's an opportunity for them to receive something if there's commercial development in that space, but also that the residents are fully informed about what their expectations should be when they move in. Thank you.
Well, I most definitely support a diverse housing stock that respects our history, environment, and plans for the city to move forward. And with that, we most definitely want to make sure that with residential housing and in historically industrial areas, that we're supporting buffer zones and at the same time ensuring that the industry's production isn't disturbed, as well as that the residents aren't put in a health risk. As mentioned, there are certain industries in the city of Richmond that if too close to residents can cause certain ailments, and so we want to make sure that neither the residents nor the industry are disturbed by the construction of residents in that area. Thank you.
I think this is another example where this is not really an issue. In a dense urban area like we're in, there are going to be commercial enterprises, there's going to be residents, there's going to be industry. And we're already so close together, we're not going to be able to create any significant buffers. We're just going to have to learn to live with each other. Everybody's going to have to give a little, and where I live in Point Richmond, I just built some apartments that are closer to the railroad track than I am to Gosney. And they've all leased up at very attractive prices. People live there. I mean, they learn to live with it. That train's not going anywhere. They can complain about it all day, every day, but it's going to go by a dozen times a day or more. But in terms of giving a little, recently BNSF came in and they relighted, put in new light fixtures in all their train yards around Point Richmond. And they put in these hugely bright LED lights that were totally unnecessary. As an architect, I know you can provide a safe level of lighting without having to do what they did. And, for them, it was just the cheapest thing for them to do. And that doesn't work, Most industrial processes can be made safer, they can be made less polluting, they can be quieter, the technology's there. It's a matter of these industries, if they're in an urban area like that, they're just going to have to give a little. They're going to have to make some accommodations because they have neighbors. And, when nobody's willing to give, we have a problem. But all these are solvable. I'm telling you what, they're all solvable. It just takes the willpower of people to sit down and get them done.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna say that's a very broad and general question because it really just kind of depends on what kind of industry just happens to be around. But when it comes to residential development, Richmond already, historically, we already have heavy industry. We have Chevron next door. We have a lot of warehouses in the community. So there's already like a lot of heavy industrial complexes that are within the city of Richmond. But when it does come to residential development, just making sure that we're focusing more on infill development within our communities, helping revitalize our downtown area, the different vacant lots towards our 23rd Street corridor, even on Cutting Boulevard, which has some light industrial areas there as well, but it is more infill and more attached to more residential communities. So that would just be my focus, is that in these historically industrial areas, just making sure that whenever we are bringing in residential projects, that it is going to be infill development. One thing that I'm excited about after meeting with the developer is the 12th and McDonald project that the City Council already approved, to where not only does he have a mixed-use affordable housing, market rate housing plan to it, but he's actually going to be investing in some of the local businesses there as well to make sure that they're thriving as well. And his idea is not only are we protecting the existing Richmond residents, but we're going to be able to help bring in new dollars to help invest in the small businesses in that area too. So it's just going to be very strategic about where we're placing our housing, who's coming in, and the kind of developments that are coming in. But you know, this is for part of the reason why I'm against building housing on Point Mulati personally, because that's just so far off to the side that it just doesn't make any sense to me, and it doesn't really support the overall internal issues within Richmond.
I'll stand up this time because that food was so good, I don't want to put myself to sleep. So it was great. The food is excellent. So what we are in right now, we are in a housing shortage. We're in a crisis. So people want a good place to live. So we have a town of incredibly thriving businesses ranging from heavy industry to light industry. We have to be really thoughtful about bringing people together to talk about what does this development mean for all sides. Not to just set up a straw and say, hey, they're heavy industry and they're bad. Instead, we want to bring people to the table, both that business and the people who are seeking to develop these units. In Point Richmond, as was discussed earlier, we have 197 units going into an old quarry. So when I moved to town, they were quarrying on the side of the hill there. Now there's going to be apartments or condos there. So there's a way for these two things, and I know it went through a lot of scrutiny, 9 times at the neighborhood council, and then through to the planning commission. So there was a lot of discussion about it with the community. The key is to go on the ground level, talk to the community members, see what they want, and also to the businesses, bring them to the table. Look, a lot of us have been talking about, when I get in office, I'm going to do X community engagement. I've been doing it. I've been doing it for the 9 years, and I've been doing it since March, with 9 collaborative solutions workshops. Number 10 is next week. It's going to be focused on the future of cannabis in Richmond. So we're talking about business, right? We're talking about how the two can coexist. And there is technology out there for businesses to be able to thrive and grow, but also keep our environment clean, right? So that we are all breathing. Because they have people that work at those businesses that want to have a healthy family, a healthy life too as well. We all want that. So how do we work together to make sure that that is accomplished while we're building in Richmond? Thank you very much. Sir.
Thank you. This is a very broad general question, but I think it's a broad general question that was asked because there are specific problems. And I want to address those specific problems. We passed a general plan that actually incorporates business land into residential. And I'm referring to the land where the Safeway is, where the Biorad, the meat market, that's all due to become residential. So the thing is that there wasn't conversation about how that transition was going to happen. And we allowed building to happen at Marina Way without considering how those businesses would impact Marina Way and how Marina Way would impact those businesses. And so we had major discord over noise levels. I like Vice Mayor Melvin Willis's attitude in terms of dealing with problems, because he knows how to bring parties together and to have that conversation that we should have had before or during the time that we were making the plan. So I would like to see the city help businesses relocate, if relocation is what the plan calls for. And we need to work together, and we need to rectify or ameliorate the impact that our city plan is causing businesses.
I don't know if having a residential area and an industrial area is more taxes for that resident or not, but I lived right next door to the ring factory in North Richmond. So I think it would be like a half, you know, you would consider the half of the people, whether or not you build homes or next to a factory or next to an industrial area. I think it's more or less of a, you know, if it's a health problem. That would be the only thing I could think of. And if everybody is paying the same amount or less as a resident, rather than a commercial.
Hi, I don't have any specific recommendations, but the idea of living close to where you work sounds good to me, especially right now with the really heavy traffic that we see.
Thank you. This question is very broad, like everyone has mentioned, but we have to consider that most of it is common sense. You know, depending on what type of business we're talking about, but things that we have to really consider are the risk. And the biggest risk that we're looking at right now is health risk, safety, economic risk, but then we're also talking about the social and the family and sports risk that we have. We build things that we're looking at, and all that is good because that brings in revenue. But then we also need to consider, back in the general plan that we talked about, you know, one of the #1 issues there we had was building more parks, restrooms in our parks, having the families to go out. That was one of the #1 things, and till now I don't see a new park being built. We talked about redevelopment of residential and commercial, and all that is good, and I agree with that. But again, we have to really understand where we're going to take our kids to. You know, we're in a deficit of 23 soccer fields and sports fields, and we still have not built one of them. So we really need to consider all those risk factors that we're talking about. The other one is redevelopment of homes. What type of homes are we talking about? Are these affordable homes, high-class homes, or what are we talking about? Are we going to build something that is industrial in a place that is hazardous, or like a greenhouse? Then anybody would love to live close to a greenhouse, right? But so we really have to look into those risk factors right there. Thank you.
So because we've been so efficient with time and everybody's been, I'm going to allow for everybody to get a 1-minute conclusion, whatever you want. B, if you could give them a 30-second heads up, but we're going to start with Mrs. Garcia, we can go back this way. Okay, 1 minute, everybody.
Conclusion on just anything?
Anything you want to say to the group. Things you haven't said that you want.
Yes. I've been living in Richmond for 40 years, and more than half of my life I have contributed to this community. And what I have contributed is everything that I see that is needed, especially for all those families that are left behind. I've been a youth counselor for over 18 years. I worked in many nonprofit organizations for 23 years. And what I see is the customer service, if you will, of going into detail with families, knowing exactly what are their needs. We just had a clean slate this last weekend. Of course, sponsored also by the city and Dave Schoenthal and myself. But some of the parents were leaving saying, you know what, I'm more confused than I was when I came in. I said, hold on, let's go back in there and talk about the details. They were confused because they didn't understand. And this is something that I bring to the city of Richmond. Be able to give that type of detailed information to the customers that are not well aware. Thank you.
Yes. Had it and I forgot. But my idea of helping Richmond develop in the business areas to create more, to bring in more businesses, but also help the ones that are already here to adapt to a new changing environment with technology. I know personally from Target we're changing, and the reason why is because we have to adapt to what's happening. And that's kind of what I would want to see for Richmond, bringing in more businesses, recruiting them, and helping the ones that are already here adapt to the changing environment.
Excuse me. I have served the city of Richmond for over 50 years. I founded a nonprofit in 1991, and we received our 501c3 in 1993. And it was founded because at that time we had over 64 murders in the city of Richmond, and that was a safe place for the youth to come in the Iron Triangle. I've served on the police commission. I've served on the anti-drug task force. I've been the president of our neighborhood council in the Iron Triangle. And I've also been a substitute teacher in the West Country Coastal Unified School District. I received the Citizen of the Year Award, and I was nominated by Officer Taylor for that award, working with the youth in the city of Richmond in Iron Triangle. I also received a proclamation from Mayor Gail McLaughlin, and the Citizen of the Year Award was presented to me by Mayor Rosemary Corbin. Thank you. Vote for me in November 6th.
Hi, my name is Eduardo Martinez. I'm ending my first term on the Richmond City Council, and I'm asking for your support for re-election. I believe that I've done a very fine job in representing residents and businesses here in Richmond. So I am a retired elementary school teacher. I am able to work with all ages, and I'm also able to work with all kinds of people. As a teacher, I worked with the police department, I worked with social services, I worked with youth, I worked with parents, I worked with other teachers, administration. So I know how to organize people and get them to do what is best for the community as a whole. So once again, I ask for your support. Thank you.
So I'm asking you all to catch the wave with Dave on November 6th. And here's why. Richmond is on the move. I've been here for 18 years. My daughter's been in school for the last 9. And I've been giving back to the community in a big way. That is by raising money for local nonprofits. Mindful Life Project, Washington Elementary PTA. I'm looking out in the audience right now. I see almost everybody in the room I've worked with one point or another to make this city great. The way that you make this city great is by keeping it safe. We need to make sure that our kids get to school safe, that our people who are working in their jobs get there safe, and also our neighborhoods. We want to have great neighborhoods, places where people can live and thrive. And that, built into that, is that they have good jobs. There is dignity in work. Getting people jobs so that they can live in place and not be displaced by what's going on out there. We can't draw a wall around our city and keep people out. We got to welcome them in and show them the beautiful community that we have so that we can have a stronger community. With that, fired up and ready to go.
My name is Melvin Willis. Thank you for having us all have the time to be able to present to you. Just real briefly, I've been a community organizer for the past 7 years. Each and every issue that I fought for, whether it was around housing, healthcare, immigration issues, working people's rights, everything has always been community-led, and it's been my job just to go out and engage people and ask folks what are the issues and concerns, what is their vision for a solution, and how do we get there. Now, I think there is a great opportunity to make sure that there is community engagement between the business community and the residents that live there, because I want to see business projects go forward, but my main thing is also making sure that they're accepted by the community. And my job just as a public official is just making sure that I'm a part of that conversation to bridge those gaps, so as projects are moving forward, they're accepted by the community and we can all thrive together. I hope you consider me for November 6th as your new Richmond mayor, and thank you again for having me this afternoon.
Okay, so let's confront the elephant in the room. This is a business-themed event today. Folks, you can't have a business-friendly city council and have an RPA-dominated city council. In the world of the RPA, corporations are evil, landlords are greedy, and profit is a nasty word. So I think you know what you have to do. You've got to go out there and get a city council that's got a little more diversity to it than the one we have, and that's your job. I'm going to cut my colleague Odd a little bit of slack. I actually think for an RPA member, she's got some promise. So I'm going to give it to her.
Well, once again, my name is Nicholas Johnson III, and I'm a fourth generation Richmond resident. My great-grandparents came to work in the Kaiser shipyards. My grandparents were chemical repairmen, factory workers, garbage truck drivers, armored truck drivers, heavy industry workers. And I also serve as your chair of the Economic Development Commission, and on that commission, I've been working relentlessly to diversify and expand Richmond's tax base by recruiting new businesses as well as helping to expand existing ones. Which is why I also have the proud endorsement of 2 former mayors of Richmond, 6 former city council members, the Building and Construction Council, as well as several businesses throughout the city of Richmond, and I hope to obtain your support as well. Thank you so much, and once again, my name is Nicholas Johnson III, and I'm looking for your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Ana Recinos. Since I did get a call out, I'll call you all in to say that the reason why I have this wonderful business acumen is because my grandparents were entrepreneurs. They owned several businesses both here in the US and in El Salvador. And because of that, I'm very passionate about their type of entrepreneurialism that involved a lot of cooperation and giving back to the community. We do things very differently because we know that profitability for, not all the folks in the room, but definitely for the majority, has been for very few people. And the type of entrepreneurialism that my grandparents taught me was that you share the wealth. You treat your employees well and with respect, and I expect that many of you feel the same way. That's why I believe that we'll be able to work together. I do have those expectations that are rooted in social justice, fairness, and equality, both for you as entrepreneurs, business owners, and as workers. Those are things that are very important to me. And so, while some people might think that that's a negative way, I have had no trouble working with business owners in the city of Richmond. Vote for me, November 6th.
Thank you again for coming here, and thanks for having this event. I'm running on my record. My record is one of somebody who doesn't just talk about business development, economic development, but gets out there, rolls up his shirt sleeves, goes to meetings, goes out of town. When I went to travel, I would go to conferences in Miami or whatever. I'd go out and meet with people in LA, Oregon, Seattle, etc., who could possibly bring businesses, especially affordable housing projects, into Richmond. I have stood in there on tough issues. When we passed the Chevron agreement, Chevron was polling negative 4-1. I lost that election after that, but I voted for the right thing. When we had the feel-good eminent domain policy, help struggling underwater homes, help them from foreclosure, sounds great on the surface. Bad plan, never saved a home, cost the city nearly $1 million, and if we had passed it, we probably would have gotten sued for much more than that. So I'm somebody who's going to do the right thing as I see it, and if there's polling or politics or whatever contrary, I'm going to do it anyway.
Hi, so thanks thanks to you all for coming out here. So when I went to law school at Berkeley, a bunch of courses I took were in business law, and that is why I have an almost instinctive understanding of the needs of business, how those interact with the laws we pass. So that is always at the top of my mind when some law comes up. My wife has a small business of her own, so I understand the needs of small businesses also. I'm also good with finances. Part of that comes from I was a software engineer, so I'm good with numbers. The city lost over $100 million because it engaged in swaps. Because council passed that without really understanding it. And with me, you can depend on it that I will study things carefully, make a good call. And that is why the East Bay Times in 2016, they said, Vinay is by far the most financially astute member. If the city's finances go down, you are in trouble too. Thank you.
So let's give them all a big hand. Thank you all for taking the time to do this, because it's not an easy task, and best of luck to all of you.